This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Calendar. Let's be real. Running a household can be exhausting and chaotic. And finding the perfect Mother's Day gift, it's not exactly a no-brainer. Until now. The Skylight Calendar is the best way to organize the family and give everyone, especially mom, some peace of mind to enjoy the things that matter most. The Skylight Calendar is a smart, touchscreen calendar that keeps track of and manages the chores, dinner planning, groceries, and to-dos for the whole family. The Skylight Calendar automatically syncs each family member's digital calendars and displays them all together on one color-coded touchscreen. It even doubles as a digital picture frame, so you can finally share all those special moments that are just sitting on your phone. As a limited-time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightcal.com/easy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening. Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. I'm your host for Yoga Birth Babies. And today's podcast is really special. We have a community member who also happens to be a licensed mental health therapist who has a private practice in New York, Evelyn. And she specializes in perinatal mental health, including therapy related to fertility, prenatal, and postpartum concerns. So not only does she have that background as a professional, but as I mentioned, she was at PYC for both her babies. And what is really special about Evelyn is she had an experience where she had her second child at 26 weeks pregnant. So her son, Henry, was in the NICU for a fair amount of time. So I asked Evelyn to come on and talk about that experience. So she comes to this podcast with such rich knowledge. Not only is she professional in this specific time of life for someone, fertility and prenatal and postpartum concerns, she went through this herself. And I thought, who better of a person to reach out and talk about this, the NICU. It's not something a lot of people want to experience, but it is a reality for many. So Evelyn is so open and vulnerable and amazing that she talked about her experience, and she has some really amazing support for those that may go through it and those that are going through it, and some hindsight for those that have gone through it. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Before we get to that, I just wanted to thank whoever left an anonymous rating on the iTunes Yoga Birth Babies page. It was just a rating, not a review, but still so appreciated. If you have a moment, it helps people find the podcast and get this rich knowledge to leave a rating review. Also, I was sprucing up the Prenatal Yoga Center teacher training page and just working on the newsletter, and I came across one of the reviews or testimonials that one of our past teacher trainees sent in to me. And I've read it a few times, but it was a couple months ago, and I just reread it. And it just was really near and dear to me. And so I'm going to read this little snippet of a review, partly because I know that Izzy Adair, who actually wrote this, listens to the podcast. So Izzy, thank you for your heartfelt words. It was an amazing experience to work with you during the training. And it's also amazing to see the work that you continue to put out to the pre- and postnatal community in Asheville. So Izzy wrote, "This training not only incorporated alignment-based teaching, evidence-based information, and childbirth education, but also gives instructors the tools they need to help pregnant-bodied individuals step into their power as birthing people. After all the trainings I've had the privilege to complete, this one is one of the best investments of time, energy, and money. Can't recommend it enough." Thank you, Izzy, for your words, and thank you for continuing to support the pre- and postnatal community. So with that, just a heads up, we have only 2 spots left for our fall teacher training in New York City. The early bird special is ending soon for our Charlotte training. We just had a recent sign up for the one in Washington, D.C., then we're back in New York for the spring, and then back to Richmond, Virginia for the late spring. So lots going on. Okay, without further ado, we're going to take a very quick break and then jump back to the conversation with Evelyn. Enjoy.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Evelyn, it is so good to have you back on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
Yes, I know last time we talked, we said, okay, I'll get you back for a NICU talk. That was like 8 months ago, but clearly I'm not
That's how
timely.
life goes.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're back talking about this because the NICU, as you and I have spoken about, it's not something people necessarily want to have to go through, but it is, possible. Sure. So since you have experience in this, I'd love to hear your take on it. So, but first let's just do
I'm open.
Great. A little bit about you and what you do.
Okay, great. So I'm a perinatal mental health therapist in New York City. That means that I focus on all things that have to do with starting and growing a family. So fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, parenting, all of those things. And that has been my specialty for a little while. I have a private practice on the Upper West Side in Manhattan. In addition, I work in the outpatient program at the Motherhood Center, which is a really innovative day treatment and outpatient program helping moms.
I love
they
them.
are really amazing. I feel so privileged to work there. So they're helping moms with perinatal mood disorders, but they're offering so much else to the perinatal community as well.
So the reason I wanted to reach out to you to talk about NICU, the NICU experience, is because you have experience there.
Exactly. So I'm the mom of two wonderful boys who are now 4 and 2. And one of my sons was a NICU baby. So I'll be speaking both as a therapist and really a lot as a NICU mom. I also serve on the Family Advisory Council for the NICU at Mount Sinai West. So I'm working with NICU families all the time. And so this is really a specialty for me as well, and a place that, is definitely close to my heart.
Absolutely. So I guess one thing I forgot to mention is we keep saying NICU. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. So it's the neonatal intensive care unit. Your baby, after you give birth, your baby could go to the NICU if you give birth early. If they're, it could be something quick, like they're just monitoring the baby's sugar levels or their breathing. But for some parents, it's a longer stay if your baby is born early and doesn't have the skills that they need to kind of navigate and manage the outside world.
So you tell me a little bit about your story and your time with your baby in the NICU?
Sure. So I had my son Henry at 26 weeks. I had what appeared to be a fairly normal pregnancy. One evening, though, and it happened to be Halloween, which was very strange, but
that's my birthday.
I couldn't feel him. Oh, well, how nice. I love Halloween, but this one wasn't my best Halloween. I just didn't feel him moving, and I noticed it, but thought maybe he was sleeping. So I took my older son trick-or-treating, and when we returned, I still didn't feel him moving, and I knew he usually moved that time of day. I think I was very lucky that he had a pretty clear pattern of movement. So I tried all the things I knew to do, like eating a big dinner and even eating some Halloween candy and lying down, and I just couldn't get him to move. So I called my OB, who said it was likely nothing but to go in for monitoring. And at the time we lived near the hospital, so I told my husband to stay home with our son, and I just walked over. I was so sure they would say everything was fine. In triage, though, they could get a heartbeat, but they still couldn't stimulate him. So they let me know that the best option was an emergency C-section.
Oh, wow.
And that was shocking to me. I was definitely in denial for quite a few minutes. But then things began to happen very quickly. My husband arrived. They rushed me in for the C-section. And after he was born, almost immediately, I saw him very quickly, but he was taken to the NICU. And because of the C-section, I wasn't able to see him until the next day. And I was truly in shock. I could never have imagined that this would happen. And I can be honest and tell you that I cried a lot those first few days. I feel very bad for my roommate at the hospital because I just cried a lot. And when I did see him, he was hooked up to so many wires and tubes. His face was mostly hidden by an eye mask because of the jaundice light and the CPAP that was supporting his breathing. So it was hard in the beginning to connect and to feel like he was my baby. I just kept thinking, I didn't want this for him, for me, for our family. One thing I did know that I could do was to pump milk for him. So I put a lot of energy into that task. And really, I think that kind of regulated me, just knowing I could do that every few hours.
Probably
and
also
gradually
helped your hormonal levels, getting some of that
I'm
oxytocin.
sure it did.
Yeah.
And gradually the days got better. It was a roller coaster ride with a lot of ups and downs. And I think many parents describe their NICU stay that way. It ended up being a 4-month NICU stay, which is, I want to tell parents that is not common. And, for many families, it's a few days, maybe a few weeks. But it was quite a journey for us. And so I'll speak a little bit later about coping skills and about how we kind of managed that stressful time.
Did they figure out what was going on at 26 weeks, that something shifted?
Right. They don't have complete answers for us, and that is difficult for all of us. We've had to just kind of move on. And I think that's true not for everybody. Many times they can figure it out, but they're not sure. They think that maybe there was something going on with my placenta. But he did have a bleed in his brain. And so for him, it actually was the right call. The best thing was for him to come out and kind of be attended to and get what he needed. So, so we didn't know beforehand that obviously that we would have a NICU stay. My older son was full term. And so, it was definitely very different than my first experience.
I just am shocked. I knew, I'd kind of heard around the studio, I knew that you had your child early, but I didn't really know the details. And I guess I'm just so in awe of how in tune you were with your body to recognize, especially on a busy night like Halloween with your older child, where you're probably focused on getting him in his costume and going out, that you had that inside voice of saying, hey, I'm not feeling the baby. I usually do, because it'd be so easy in such a chaotic day to not be in your body and feel that. So how fortunate that you have that awareness.
I do feel very lucky that, like I said, he already felt like part of our family because he always moved when I would read bedtime stories with my older son, James. And so, to not feel him move at that time felt significant. I had a lot of anxiety in my pregnancy with my older son. So part of it, I think, I did dismiss it a little bit, thinking this is just anxiety again. And by anxiety, I mean, just kind of the usual mom, like what's going on, that kind of thing. But I decided not to dismiss it, and I'm glad that I didn't. And I happen to have a really wonderful OB team. And that made a huge difference in those moments because they were very real and very personal. That makes such a difference in those difficult moments, trusting your OB team.
So you had no idea up to that point that anything would be different than your first pregnancy. So it wasn't like they found some abnormality beforehand and you're like, okay, we're getting our head around this. It's likely going to be a NICU stay. Right. That wasn't the case for us. So, right. It was very shocking. And I do remember, when they first came in to tell me it wasn't my OB, it was, just the hospitalist saying that I should have the emergency C-section. And I remember thinking, like, no way, this is not happening. I'm not going to do it. And I think that's why it is so important that you have an OB team that you trust, because when they came in and were just so real, I was able to move forward and just say, like, this is not what we planned or what I wanted. And my husband was wonderful. He kept saying, like, step 1, we do this. Step 2, we see what happens next. Like, he just kept me very focused on
this one step of having the C-section, and that was great. So
that's so great that you had that team there and you had that support from your partner, because I could imagine just how overwhelming that must be. Like, there you are still in your second trimester. Probably
right.
Birth is so far away. And so I'm going to divert a little if you don't mind, but do you have anything, having, you are a therapist, you have been through this yourself. Do you have anything for that person that's in the state that you were in? Like, you walked in thinking, oh, they're just going to monitor, I'm probably going to go home. And then all of a sudden there's this massive cascade.
I think that's a very difficult one, to use any kind of regular coping skills, because you're in shock and you're in kind of survival mode. But I do think staying in the moment. So I would get more overwhelmed because as a perinatal therapist, I do know quite a bit about birth. And so I knew that a 26-weeker, that this wasn't good. And I would think ahead. And so having my husband keep me in the moment, I think was very important. So, just thinking we just have to get through this. We can do this, and this is our task. So I would say, grounding in that way, having someone who keeps you kind of in the present moment and let the rest unfold, because you really, as much as you might know, and as much as we read on Google these days, or, you don't really know how things will go, and there is no way to know. So, really staying in the present moment was helpful for me.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Frame. Mother's Day is almost here. What are you getting her? Something that shows you care. Something that makes her feel loved. Something that won't stress you out. Something like the Skylight Frame. The Skylight Frame is the perfect gift. It's a touchscreen photo frame your whole family can upload photos to, from wherever they are in the world. It's a way to share with her all the moments that matter. It sets up in seconds. You can even make sure that it's already loaded with photos when your mom opens her Mother's Day gift. And her Skylight Frame can hold thousands of the treasured photos you share. It's an easy, heartfelt way for mom to stay connected with those who matter most. It really is the perfect gift. Now, as a special Mother's Day offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightframe.com/easy.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Calendar. Let's be real. Running a household can be exhausting and chaotic. And finding the perfect Mother's Day gift, it's not exactly a no-brainer. Until now. The Skylight Calendar is the best way to organize the family and give everyone, especially mom, some peace of mind to enjoy the things that matter most. The Skylight Calendar is a smart, touchscreen calendar that keeps track of and manages the chores, dinner planning, groceries, and to-dos for the whole family. The Skylight Calendar automatically syncs each family member's digital calendars and displays them all together on one color-coded touchscreen. It even doubles as a digital picture frame, so you can finally share all those special moments that are just sitting on your phone. As a limited-time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightcal.com/easy.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm still digesting. I'm like, wow. You're so grounded and calm and able to talk about it. How long did
now I am.
Well, yeah, 2 years later. How long did it take you to be able to process all this?
I think that I still process it. We like to think of processing as having a beginning and an end, but I think it's just, it goes on over time and different things. His birthday is still difficult, although it's wonderful because he's a wonderful kid, but it's a difficult day for me. And so I reach out to the people who help me at those times, who know how to kind of get me through. I have a wonderful acupuncturist who has been great and who kind of does things that I wouldn't know how to do with words. She just kind of helps my body to process. So that's been great. But yeah, it's definitely been a process. And like I said, I really did for the first 3 days, I think I just cried nonstop.
How could you not?
Other than when I was in the NICU. So,
I mean, you're trying to wrap your head around something that's so out of your realm of reality. Like, how do you not just cry? And how healthy it is that you did. I mean, I think that's a great way of getting it out instead of trying to hold it in.
In hindsight, I think it was very healthy. At the time, it felt, you want to kind of be able to be positive and move forward. But as a therapist and now in hindsight as a parent, I do think it was very healthy just to use that time in the hospital, to just let it out and cry.
So if parents do happen to know, because, sometimes people do know they are going to have a child that may need some support, tests, there's so many scans and tests that they may have some sense of like, all right, just heads up, there might be some heart abnormality or lung or whatever. How can parents prepare if they know there is a chance that their baby might be in the NICU?
Yes, so you're right. Some parents do know, and I would say to begin with, talk to your OB about the level of NICU available. For you, in terms of the hospital where you're delivering, do they have the capability your baby will need and the consulting pediatric specialist if you know that might apply? For many people, though, the NICU stay will be fairly straightforward and the baby is just there to be monitored and grow. So no matter how long or short the stay, though, I would line up supports for yourself, both physically and emotionally. Physically, people can do things like provide meals, a meal train, or just, providing meals here and there. They can help you with errands that you just don't have the time and energy for and day-to-day tasks. If you have older children, you can line up childcare or play dates. And emotionally, think about the ways that people show up for us in different ways. So think about who you have to be there for you and what you might need. Some people are good at being a shoulder to cry on, and others will be there just to listen. Others will keep you positive, kind of thinking about who you have and what they're capable of. So those are kind of the...
As I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, yes, some people are going to know ahead of time, but then some people, like what you did, or someone just was having, they might be term, but all of a sudden baby had some meconium or something. It seems like we talk about in childbirth education a lot, like, okay, you might have vaginal birth, but let's have the possibility that you might have cesarean. But I think it's important to also have the backup plan of what would happen if your baby was in the NICU. So even having that conversation as part of the regular conversation of birth, I don't think that's acknowledged enough. So I think this is a great highlight that it could be a possibility.
I agree. I think, I have had one or two childbirth educators consult with me and discuss how could I bring this into the curriculum a little bit, just so people are aware this is a possibility and they're able to kind of process it a bit, prepare if possible, and just have that flexibility of thinking like this is a possibility. Just the way that we ask people to have flexible thinking around their birth plan, right?
Right. So I like that idea of like, okay, in case we're at the hospital for longer, childcare services. Well, are there other services that parents can use to find support during that time? I don't know if what if someone's not living, you happen to live close. And in New York, a lot of us, do live around, it's a small island and there's a lot of hospitals, but like in other parts, they may have driven an hour, or their baby might be taken to, their hospital may not have a NICU, and so the baby's taken elsewhere. Do you know if there's any services to help support families in that situation?
Right. So we actually had a family in the NICU with us who they were visiting and gave birth, and so it is tricky. The social workers in the NICU can support you in trying to find housing, and some hospitals have housing or a Ronald McDonald house or things like that. The New York hospitals don't really seem to have that, and so it was actually the Upper West Side Moms group that worked together to find this family, piece together housing for them during their stay, and so it is difficult. But I would say consult the social worker in the NICU. where where your baby is, and usually they will know what resources do exist.
Are there any sort of is there any sort of financial service that like this could be a really big deal for someone to now have to feed themselves and take time off of work? And do you know if there's anything like that?
I'm not aware of any, and I think you're right, that is a big burden on families. There are some foundations that support families, but I don't know that they provide financial assistance. There's the Graham's Foundation. March of Dimes does a lot in terms of preemie babies,
right.
But no, not that I'm aware of.
That's a shame, because
it really is.
If someone all of a sudden, some people it will be part of their maternity leave, but now maybe the other partner might have to take time off. So that could be, and then, if they don't have great insurance, the hospital bill. So I just start seeing dollar signs piling up for people. So, my heart goes out to them.
Definitely. It's very difficult.
And I can imagine it being pretty scary and overwhelming to have a child in the NICU. And at the same time, the new parent just had a baby. Do you have any advice for the person that just birthed, since, it's so here you're trying to wrap your head around, okay, is my baby okay? But then, like you were healing from a cesarean. So I'm imagining physically and emotionally, the recovery is just huge. Do you have anything you can talk about that?
Right. So for moms, my advice really is to take care of yourself emotionally and physically. That's so much easier said than done. But thinking of yourself as part of a family system that now includes this baby, and for that system to function in a healthy and sustainable way, you have to take care of yourself and function. And I think that self-care has been a little bit belittled recently, and it's certainly not a fix-all. But in this instance, by self-care, how can you pay attention to your physical needs, pay attention to your body's need to rest and recover? So maybe you spend a little time in the NICU, but then you go back to your room and rest. And that's hard. It's hard to leave your baby, right? But to know what your body needs and how you can best be there for yourself, your baby, your whole family long term. And then in terms of emotional needs, to really grieve the loss of what you expected in terms of having a baby, or to allow whatever emotions you do have, whether that's being angry or fearful, and work through those feelings. That is true self-care, is being present in your body, being present with your feelings, and then processing them, taking stock of what you need, and being able to effectively communicate it to those around you.
Is there, I know there's social workers there, and I know social workers kind of range. Some are really about providing services and helping find those services. And then some social, like you're a licensed clinical social worker, same as my husband. So I know that provides therapy. Do you know if that's something that the person that just gave birth can have at that time, like a therapist come in?
Right. So for most, you're right. There's a whole range, and in hospitals, there's a range in terms of what they see, their job description, and kind of the caseload that they're carrying. So most NICUs do have a social worker, and some even have a psychologist who's there for support, or to provide referrals. If they don't, so if they have a large caseload and they're really there more to connect you with referrals and things like that, then they usually have a list of outside therapists who you can contact, like myself or other therapists. And I personally make NICU visits. I, will Skype with families or FaceTime, whatever it is that they need, because usually when your child is in the NICU, you're pretty much going between home and the NICU. You don't really want to be anywhere else. That feels like a lot already. So they usually have some kind of list who they consult with. And the other thing that they can do is provide referrals to other people in the hospital in terms of lactation consultants. They might also run a support group. And there are sometimes outside support groups as well.
Can you talk a little? Gosh, I have so many questions coming to my head. Okay, I'm going to try. I've been writing this down.
Worries.
Can you talk a little bit about the bonding of how... Because you weren't able to do skin to skin. Maybe you were able to touch, but I'm assuming your baby was in, not able to be really held outside of its I forgot what it's called. The
incubator, right.
Incubator. I was like, that can't be the right word, but apparently it is. It made me think of chickens for some reason.
I know.
Outside the incubator. So how did you, or maybe I should start with like, do you feel the bonding was challenged at first? And then how did you nourish that when, later?
Right. So I do think that bonding was challenged at first. I was processing so many things, and especially that feeling of I didn't want this to happen, right? I didn't want this to happen to me or to him or to our family. I thought a lot about my other son who was 2 and how this is going to affect him. And I felt bad. I felt very guilty for having those thoughts and for having any issue in terms of bonding. But I really want to normalize it because I think that it's common and that it's there. And so, and you're right, in the beginning, I couldn't hold him. I could sometimes touch him. So I would try to hold his hand. For preemies, the most comforting touch is kind of gentle, consistent touch, not like stroking. And that's just too stimulating for them. So I kind of, I started to learn things like that. But again, it was difficult. After about a month, I could do skin to skin and kangaroo care, and that certainly helped quite a bit. But even then, he still had the CPAP, which is a breathing support. It's not a ventilator, but it's a breathing support. And so it wasn't natural and easy. So a few things that I did first is I just let myself feel and grieve in the beginning. And then I started to kind of develop routines with him. One of the routines that I think was really helpful was my kind of separation routine. So anytime I had to leave, not meaning like leave to go pump, but leave for the day or leave for a while, I would read the same book. And just like I thought of it as almost like a bedtime ritual. Yeah. And so that I think was very connecting for me to him, and hopefully eventually from him back to me, and helped me to kind of separate and say goodbye. And that felt very good. I also want to mention the music therapist, who many NICUs have music therapy. And what they were able to do was to help me to think about songs or lullabies that were important to me and my family, and to use those with him. And they would use their guitars to kind of help me. Like in the beginning, he needed the pace to be very slow, and not too stimulating. So they helped me to slow it down and to make it very soft and slow. And they were just incredible.
And this was also, so the hospital provided this and the nurses? Oh my gosh, that's great.
Right. So the music therapists were incredible. They also use instruments that sound like the womb or instruments that sound like the heartbeat. And it was amazing to see how it would regulate his vital signs. And so that was really great. They really worked with us as a family.
That's so great that there is support there. So what did your day look like when you were there, and how long did you stay? Because I guess with the C-section too, it's a little bit of a longer stay.
Right. So I stayed in the hospital. I ended up having to stay, I think, for 4 nights. There was a little bit of an issue with my epidural, and I had to get the skin patch. I was having those epidural headaches, so I fought it because I wanted to go home to my 2-year-old, but I stayed an extra night, and I think it was the right call. And so then, I did have to leave, and that was very hard, and I can talk about that in a minute too. But my schedule, because I had an older child, I actually think that was very fortunate in many ways, because as hard as it was, and in the beginning it was very hard to be away from the NICU at all, but I knew that he needed me too. And so I chose to spend the mornings with him and do some of the things that we, well, in the beginning I couldn't do, all the things that we normally did in terms of going to the park, but just play and spend time together. And then I had a sitter come, and I would go to the NICU for the afternoon and early evening until my husband could come after work and stay with Henry, the baby. And so I think that brought me a lot of balance, as stressful as it was, because I did have to laugh and play and have fun and be with my 2-year-old and be back in our routines a little bit. And not every family has that. And it can feel like you need to be in the NICU all the time. And for some families that's comforting and helpful, but for many it's exhausting, So I encourage families to find one part of the day in which they're not going to rush. So that might be when they wake up and take a shower and eat breakfast, or when they come home and spend some time together and have dinner, that, you're not rushing to the NICU, you're always going to be thinking about your baby in the NICU, but that you're focusing on yourself, maybe focusing on your relationship, that you're eating good food, that kind of thing. Even if you can only find one time of day to do it, I think it's important.
I think that's
so that was
such
helpful.
great advice, because I can imagine just going down this rabbit hole and that's all you focus on. Of course, and part of your mind's like, well, how do I not? But then because you were forced to be still alive and functional and a parent to your other child, you're right. I could see that being, it's a double-edged sword, but also really important to be like, okay, I can't just dwell here. And it kind of pushes you back into reality.
I think so. I think it was definitely a blessing for me personally. So I encourage families to find a way to do that. There is a lot of guilt, right? And it's very hard to let go of that. You can check in though at any time. They encourage you to call when you're not there. The doctors, if you can attend rounds with the doctors, and that I think can be very helpful. But let's say you're not able to attend rounds for one day, they always call and give you an update.
Well, that's nice.
On your baby. Mm-hmm.
What was it like going home that first night without your baby?
Oh, it was extremely difficult. I think it still felt surreal, that it wasn't real at all. And I checked in a lot those first few nights. I think I was up at night pumping, and I would call the NICU just to check, even though there wasn't that big of an update for them to give. But I really had to grieve the loss of what I had expected this birth to be like, and this time for my family to be like. I didn't feel prepared. As like many other moms, I had feelings about adding a new baby to the family and what would that change for my 2-year-old. And, I didn't feel that we were prepared yet. And so there were all those feelings, and I really just had to kind of grieve it. The nurses are amazing. So it was good to know he was getting great care. They become really part of your support system as well, because they're there day to day, and they're teaching you about your baby and telling you what he was doing overnight and things like that. So I think that really helped, knowing that they were there for him.
How did you explain this all to your 2-year-old?
I think he was 2 at the time. He was 23 months. And so I let him know. I don't think he had a real understanding of it, but he knew the biggest thing for him was that mommy was leaving and going to the hospital a lot, right? So what I told him was that his baby brother came early, and he needed extra care from the doctors for a while, so mommy would be going to visit him, but that mommy would still be there for him as well. And I noticed that he played it out quite a bit in his play. So he would play like things about the hospital or the doctor more often than I'd seen him do that before. He happened to be a pretty verbal 2-year-old, so that was helpful.
So
but
he was
would play those
processing
things
it.
out. He was processing it, yeah. And he asked me, I think it was after Henry came home, actually, but he asked me things because he asked me why Henry had to stay longer and why he needed special care. And I just said that he had a boo-boo, a big boo-boo, and that the doctors needed to take more care of him. And so then he asked questions, as they will do, about boo-boos, like, what kind of boo-boo, if I get a boo-boo, do I go to the hospital? So we had to explain, like, some boo-boos mommy and daddy can handle. Others, we have to go see a doctor. And for others, we would be at a hospital like Henry is. And so he was curious about it, but I don't think he fully understood. We did have a special day for him when his brother came home. So we were thrilled that Henry was coming home. But we realized it was also a big change for James. And so we had kind of we called it Big Brother Day. So we had cake, and we had gifts for little brother and big brother, and it was really nice and special. And I think he felt included instead of like all the attention was on Henry. So
That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk a little bit, I'm jumping around on some of the questions I
No,
knew I was
that's
going to
fine.
ask, but can you talk about that transition? So you talked about how to make it also about your older child, but I can imagine there being some massive fear and apprehension about you have your baby, it's, stays at the NICU, and then you go home and you're kind of like, okay, I can breathe and get my mind around it. Then all of a sudden, now you're going home with your baby, and that in itself.
No, I mean, there were mixed feelings. There really were. I was thrilled that he was coming home. I was thrilled that this chapter was kind of ending, but it becomes a very safe place in a way.
Right. Now, so they're like, here, go.
You wish and wish for, right, exactly. You wish for that day, he, towards the end, he was just there because he wasn't gaining weight, at the rate that they wanted, and he was having a few feeding issues. So there was a lot of back and forth, like, oh, he's going home. Oh, wait, he's not. And so I kept thinking, like, I'll just be so happy when they say he's coming home. But when they told me, I guess, on a Friday that it was very likely, that he was coming home that next Monday. And I spent the whole weekend feeling apprehensive, feeling like not sure things would change again, right? I mean, it's another big change. And the nurses are extremely competent and wonderful. And they have the NICU babies on a bit of a routine because that's what works for the NICU, right? For most of the babies to sleep around the same time and eat around the same time. And so it feels like, can I take that? Am I going to be able to do that? And then even bigger than that, they're connected to so many things that are monitoring their vital signs and their breathing. And so the idea that they're suddenly going to be disconnected seems very strange.
So what was that like for you?
So it was tough. I think we adjusted okay. I don't remember. I think I did the normal amount of checking in terms of, is he breathing and things like that? Because I really felt like he had been there so long, they wouldn't have sent him home unless he was really as ready as they could make him, as ready as he could be. We thought about getting one of those monitors that goes on your toe, but we knew there were a lot of false alarms with that, the one that tells you if they stop breathing, but we knew there were a lot of false alarms. And I just decided that, he was going to be in our room and close to us, and that was not going to help us. We needed to start seeing him as a baby. So it was difficult, and it was a big adjustment. And one thing I did want to tell parents is that the routine that they establish in the NICU works really well there. That does not mean it's going to work at home.
Did you try to keep it up?
And nor should it. I didn't, because I'm not a person who kind of lives by routines, even with my older son. I know that feels more important to some moms to know exactly what to expect. And I think that can be helpful for the first few days to try to keep the routine that they've established. But I have seen families kind of get stuck in that, and babies change all the time. Their needs change all the time. So don't be afraid to be responsive to their changing needs and to say, it looks like he's still sleeping. He doesn't have to eat right now, that kind of thing. So, it's also important to have some support when you're coming home, just like you would for any birth, hopefully. I believe we had my mom here. We didn't have any kind of night nurse or anything like that, but we did eventually, because I was still pumping for him, and then he was waking up. So we chose just a few nights to have our postpartum doula from last time come and spend the night. And just knowing that she was going to be coming once in a week was heaven, because okay, I'm gonna, other than pumping, I'm gonna get sleep.
Let's take a moment to give a shout out for postpartum doulas.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, they're so amazing, and they're so worth the investment. My brain was going to, when you were talking about the coming home and the anxiety. We happened to have a home birth, and while it was full term and everything was fine, there was that
panic of our midwife and our doula leaving, and all of a sudden, like, we're alone with this child. And all my husband and I could think of was like, when does the postpartum doula get here? 3 hours. We can keep the baby alive for 3 hours. We can do that. So
Exactly.
I think that
Exactly.
anxiety is pretty normal. I'm sure heightened with a NICU baby because it may feel more fragile, or at least, that's the perception. But I think all parents have that. Like, now we have to keep this alive.
I think so. Right. Exactly. Like, this is now our responsibility. Can I do it? As well as the hospital seems to do it. So you kind of have that. And I think one thing I hear from a lot of NICU families is they have a harder time accepting help or finding childcare because there is the feeling that the baby is more fragile. And so, will someone, and this is something many new moms struggle with, but NICU moms, I think more so, will someone else take the kind of care of him or her that I would, right? So really not feeling like they can trust childcare. And so I understand that, but I try to encourage them to get over that hump and to find someone that they are comfortable with, because everybody needs support and everybody
you need
needs
downtime. You cannot be on there 24/7. That is, I actually think, a recipe for disaster for the family, because it's just going to diminish whoever's the main caregiver is going to diminish that person's reserves. And then what good is that person going to be?
I agree. And again, with flexible thinking, right? They may not do it exactly the way that you would do it, but they might try something new that the baby does like,
that can learn from that person.
Exactly. It can feel a bit threatening to some moms, but in the end, I think everyone's better for it. So,
what is one thing you wish someone had told you while you're going through that time that you can offer to someone that might be going through this now, or just so that someone can stick in their back pocket? Now we're talking about having like a NICU plan.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is difficult because sometimes anything people say feels like, well, you're not in this with me, but I would say, again, letting go of the guilt is so important and so difficult to do. So just really working towards that with someone. It's just so common for NICU moms to feel guilt about why their baby came early or why this happened to them, right? Or letting go of the guilt of not being able to be there all the time. I remember getting sick. I mean, it was winter, and if you're sick, you can't go to the NICU, and just feeling horrible that whole day, right? So letting go of guilt would probably be one of my biggest ones for moms. And then also that you really can't know, that the doctors have to tell you kind of all the worst case scenarios or all this could happen or this, and you really can't know how it will play out, which is
that must be so
a recipe
hard
for anxiety, right? I mean, I think it's
hard.
a perfect storm for anxiety, right? You have your hormones, you're tired, you're stressed, and then the doctors, have to tell you all the things that could go wrong or that could happen, and so really knowing that while you can't know, I like to think of Wise Mind, which is a DBT therapy tool, but Wise Mind is when you can kind of get to that grounded, centered place, and say, I can't know the answers to this right now. What I do know to be true is, and think of what those things are. What I know to be true is, I have a loving family. What I know to be true is, I will be here for this baby no matter what. Like those kind of things are really all you can hold on to. So kind of centering yourself in those.
I like that. I think that's important for all sense of anxiety, because I know I work with students that are, just in their pregnancies, babies not even there yet, but they go to the what ifs and really talk themselves onto a ledge. And I like the going back to, what do you know is true right now? You know that you're here, you know that you're sitting here and you're okay, you know your baby. Like, I think that can really pull someone off the edge. I might steal that a little bit.
Definitely. I think it's really helpful for NICU moms and for NICU parents and anyone working with NICU parents, because to tell them, many people told me, like, everything will be okay.
You don't know
and
that.
That doesn't, right. That
feels
doesn't
invalidating.
ring true, right? It feels invalidating. It feels like I certainly knew the other person meant well, but it feels like that was more for them than for you, right? They need to believe that. And so to instead say, to kind of ground yourself in this way, in this Wise Mind way, and sit with the not knowing, which is much more difficult, but at least feels true, then I think that's a better place to be.
Well, that makes me think about what family and friends can do to help at this time, and maybe also what they can be mindful of not saying. So I think you just covered one of those. Don't lie. Oh, no, don't set false expectations. But is there anything else you think family and friends can? You talked about a meal train. You talked about some childcare, or maybe, again, other things that they shouldn't do.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Frame. Mother's Day is almost here. What are you getting her? Something that shows you care. Something that makes her feel loved. Something that won't stress you out. Something like the Skylight Frame. The Skylight Frame is the perfect gift. It's a touchscreen photo frame your whole family can upload photos to, from wherever they are in the world. It's a way to share with her all the moments that matter. It sets up in seconds. You can even make sure that it's already loaded with photos when your mom opens her Mother's Day gift. And her Skylight Frame can hold thousands of the treasured photos you share. It's an easy, heartfelt way for mom to stay connected with those who matter most. It really is the perfect gift. Now, as a special Mother's Day offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightframe.com/easy. Sure.
So I think in terms of shouldn't do, it's really, it's a dynamic between the people trying to support the family and the family. The family, as much as we don't want to put more on them, the family kind of needs to try to effectively communicate what they do need. But in terms of the support system, I would say, again, just being with the family where they are, and accepting where they are that day, not trying to fix it. I had a friend who was able to really just sit with me in a day where I told her, I know that this will probably turn out, this part of it will probably turn out okay. But today I need to be sad and angry that this is happening. Yeah. And I don't want a pep talk. And she was able to do that. And that was so valuable for me and made me realize that, she could be there for me. She could hold it a bit with me. And that was amazing. So I think that also there are days when you really want to give updates and you want people to be curious. But there were times when I had to tell my family, I am overwhelmed right now and I can't update you. So please give me a few hours. And that's very hard for them because they, of course, want and need an update too. But to know that the family may not be responsive at times. And that's because they're processing and they're in the moment with what's going on.
And I just want to talk about that moment you said of, I just need to be sad and angry. That it's too so important to, again, just recognize that there's going to be such a huge fluctuation of emotions. And if someone tries to talk you, again, that goes back to invalidating, sometimes you need to be sad and angry. It's not what you wanted. And to have someone talk you out of that might push it further down. And that's not going to be healthy either.
Exactly. When people start to say everything will be okay, you immediately start to push it down, right? Not everyone, but for many people. Some people are seeking reassurance and they can kind of be open about that. I need you to reassure me. Right. But for many people, they need to just be in the moment and have to be heard. And that's important. And that helped me. In that case, Henry was facing a surgery that, while it wasn't life-threatening, I didn't want it to be happening to him. Of course. Right. And so my friend being able to let me be sad and angry the day before the surgery allowed me to be kind of strong and positive the day of his surgery, as much as anyone can be. But so I think again, pushing someone to be where they're not is not helpful, but making them feel heard can help them to really find their inner strength, right, and help them.
I feel like I see this to a different point of view, but similar with students that come back that had an unplanned cesarean, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, you and the baby are okay. That's all that matters." And you're like, "Not really."
Definitely, it's not. It's not. It still happened to you.
Yeah,
so it still happened to you. It still felt terrible and traumatic. So Right. And when people feel like their stories are heard, and that's why we encourage people to tell their stories or write their
Yeah.
stories. It's not really what society wants us to do. Society wants us to move forward. And in many ways, having a baby demands you move forward. But when you have the space for it, I find that people process it much more kind of quickly and cleanly.
I totally agree. Now that you're 2 years away from that experience and you've digested it more, is there anything that you would have done differently that you can offer to parents right now?
I would say, let's see.
Or maybe there isn't. Maybe you're like, I did exactly what I needed.
No, there are a few things. No, there are, of course, a few things. Again, I will just hit on letting go of the guilt because I think that is a huge one. I think I would have pushed harder to transition. So I pumped from him from the beginning, and they used to laugh at me in the NICU because I was lucky to have so much milk that I filled up everyone's freezer that I knew. And he was taking so little in the beginning. So, it just really started to add up. But, and so I put a lot of effort into that. But and they're very pro breast milk in the NICU because there's just no question that it is helpful to preemie babies. And not everyone can provide that. And that's completely fine. But they're very supportive of pumping. For a micro preemie like mine, when it came time to try to transition to breastfeeding, I didn't find that I had as much support because they really wanted to see how much he was getting, right? And how he was feeding. And so it was, okay, mommy, try for a little bit. Now we're going to give him the bottle, right?
Couldn't they have just weighed him before and after?
I think they could have, right? Looking back in hindsight. So I don't think I pushed hard enough. I eventually asked for a lactation consultant to come, but, it was a one-time visit. I didn't feel like I was kind of given that much attention because it was going to be difficult for him to learn to latch. But looking back, I don't think it was impossible. And I do wish I had pushed harder. So I continued to pump for him for another year after he came out of the NICU. And it worked, and maybe in some ways was good because it gave me freedom to run around at times with my older son. But I would have liked to have that option, right, to be able to breastfeed him. So I think that's a place where parents sometimes have to advocate for themselves. And I don't think that's true for, let's say you have your baby at 34 weeks or 35 when they are just right on that
cusp,
edge of ready to start nursing. But for babies born earlier, in some NICUs, not all, it can be a hard transition to make. And I happen to know that the Mount Sinai West, where I gave birth, is really working on that and trying to correct that a bit. And then the only last thing I'll mention, and I actually, I'm big on giving affirmations as well, and so I have to say that I think I did this well, but I really pushed for early intervention right away when he got home, and I think that's not necessary for everyone, especially if you're almost full term. But if you have a micro preemie and you know that you're going to need some early intervention for your child,
like OT,
then I think it's important. Right. So like OT, PT, speech, speech in the beginning doesn't apply. It can be feeding therapy. So that's kind of what early intervention is. And many different states have different forms of that. But here in New York, it's a free service. It's absolutely free. And so there's no cost to get evaluated. And then, best case scenario, you just have someone monitoring your child coming in to say, yes, they're meeting their milestones. It might be delayed from what a full-term baby would be, but they're meeting their milestones. And then for Henry, he does have some significant mobility issues. And he's stronger in other areas. He's incredibly verbal and all of these things. But, and so it has been huge for him to have the OT and the PT. So early intervention, usually the social worker in the NICU will put in the paperwork for you if it's clear that you're going to need it. But if not, here in New York, you can call 311 and ask for an evaluation. And another thing to note about early intervention is that you have a lot of choices. You're assigned to an agency, but you don't have to stay with that agency if you feel like you could get better service elsewhere. So again, really learning quickly to kind of advocate for your child and to work the systems a bit.
Yes, I love that. Work the systems. You're such a social worker. Yeah. I love that. All right, we're going to take it back.
So true.
I hear my husband say these things like, work the systems, lean into the pain. All these like social worker little memes. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, if there's one piece of advice that you want to offer new or expectant parents or anything from your many years as a therapist or mother, I just gave you a lot. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So did anything jump to your mind?
I would say being mindful of your mental health and not being afraid to speak up if you feel that you're struggling. We know how common perinatal mood disorders are, and since this is a podcast about the NICU, I will mention that parents who experience a NICU stay are more at risk. I mean, it makes sense, right? They're just bigger stressors on you during that time. So being mindful of your mental health and not being afraid to speak up if you know that you're struggling, because perinatal mood disorders are extremely responsive to treatment. They're considered acute episodes, and you don't deserve to struggle alone. You can get help, and you should. And the other thing I would say in conjunction with that can help you to kind of monitor your own mood and to also know what's going on with your partner is after you've had a baby, even if you have a full-term baby or if you have a NICU baby, having a weekly check-in with your partner or whoever you're kind of doing this with can be really helpful, because you can take a few minutes to just, there's so many logistics with baby, right? Like nap time and eating and all of these things, just checking in with each other can get lost. And so you can spend 5 minutes asking simple questions like, how are you doing? How are you coping? What was good this week? What do you need more of? Or just generally, what do you need? And sometimes it's hard to even know for yourself until you're asked, right? But it's also a great way to stay connected with your partner. So that's something I try to mention to almost every family
I think
that I work
that's
with.
so important, because I can imagine you're just this team to help the baby and you forget about each other. So
Definitely.
That's really great. So where can people find your work?
Yes, so you can go to www.evelynGamaCounseling.com, and Gama is Gama.
And we'll have this in the show notes.
Or you can, or you can reach out to the Motherhood Center, which is just themotherhoodcenter.com. They're doing amazing work as well.
I feel so blessed that we have that in New York City. I've had Paige on,
Me too.
I don't know if it's 2 or 3 times, and she just spoke. We had this big event. It was like a month or two ago. Yeah, she spoke at that too.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're so blessed in New York to have that. So I hope those that need it can reach out to the Motherhood Center or Evelyn herself. And those that are not around here, I would still check out their website or Evelyn's website for support, because we need to find support. You shouldn't be trying to do this on your own. Wow.
Certainly. And if you're not in New York City, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you try to find referrals.
Do you ever do like Zoom or Skype one-on-ones with people?
I do. As a therapist, I really can't practice outside of New York.
I didn't think about that.
Right. So, I mean, I can, if it's right, exactly. It's a licensing issue. So I can offer like 1-time or 2-time support type things and then refer you to someone in your area. But, if you don't know anyone that has had a NICU experience in your area, I'm happy to offer, 1 or 2 quick sessions for support, and then help you to try to find a referral. Postpartum support, international PSI is also a great resource for finding local supports.
Well, thank you for your time, and really you were just so open and honest about your experience, and I think people that are listening will really benefit from that. I can imagine being in this and just feeling murky and overwhelmed, and I think what you added can really hopefully just lighten the experience and lift them up. So thank you for being so vulnerable and open.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
You are welcome. All right, enjoy your day.
You too. Bye.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.